Hello and welcome to another episode of Fintech Focus TV with me, Toby Babb. Continuing our recent series, we're going to be talking about another interview today, this time with Ralf Roth, all the way from Connecticut out in America. Ralf, how are you?
I'm good. How are you today, Toby?
Yeah, really good, thank you. Really good. Lovely to have you on the show, and great to meet today. I've heard a lot about you from our US team, who've been singing your praises for some time, and looked at the extraordinarily impressive bio that you've got as well, from starting a long stint over at Deutsche Bank to moving over to Thomson Reuters, CEO of equities over at Market, and most recently over at Quantitative Brokers as the CEO, where you finished up in January this year. Interesting stories all the way through that, and done some incredible stuff around the sort of algorithmic trading and finance world that sort of we live in a lot over here at Harrington Starr. And I'm really interested to sort of speak to you earlier on and understand, what's going to sort of tempt you into the right sort of role at the moment, because I think that's where you are. You've got the luxury of being in a great position to be able to say, look, you want to do something that's exciting and going to move the needle and do something different. And we'll come on to all of that at the moment, about what great looks like for you and what interesting looks like for you, and what sort of company and people and culture are going to bring the best out of you. But before we go into all of that, I've just given you a whistle stop of some pretty impressive companies and some pretty impressive positions in there. Give us a little bit of bio about you, if you would.
Sure. As you can see from my resume, I started at Deutsche Bank, was a lifer there. What was interesting being there for 17 years was that I didn't really have just one role, which is great being in a company like this. I really started out on the trading floor in bond trading, but very quickly got into electronic trading, which was a nascent field, in particular in fixed income in the mid-90s. So through that, I worked on Autobahn, which became Deutsche's really flagship electronic trading product throughout different product lines over the years. As you might not see from my resume, I started in Frankfurt, had a stint in London, and then ultimately ended up with Deutsche Bank in New York through love. It's where I met my wife, and had an interesting transition, because I was in fixed income originally, where you learn all about yield curves and convexity and things of that nature, but then transitioned into the equity space and becoming part of the team that developed Deutsche Bank's algorithmic and electronic trading platform in equities, which was really what kept my first 17 years of my career busy. I then really felt it was time for a change, and it's probably an unusual move to go to a market data or data vendor overall. So I joined Thomson Reuters, where I knew a few people, with the intention to bring more transactional capabilities there. But turns out I ended up really being squarely in the market data business, and having the very, very big but interesting task to rebuild the 25-year-old market data platform, which was IDN back in the day, and be with a very, very large and competent team, built something called Electron, which is now their flagship real-time market data product, and frankly put us back on the map, having had all this legacy. I then moved on and did some work at IHS Market. And you see a theme there, right? Deutsche Bank, Thomson Reuters, IHS Market, all very large companies, combining some of the skills from fixed income and equities and data, working in their businesses to bring some of the companies that they had acquired, in particular in the equity space, but also outside of equities, together from an analytics perspective. And frankly, I would have never left there. It was very interesting, because I really started doing some work in the cloud space when I was at IHS Market. but an opportunity came around to run a small company, which was really something I'd never done, but also always something I'd thought about. So I joined Quantitative Brokers, leaving a job at IHS Markit after a reasonably short period of time, which was really not the way I had lived my career and my resume. It was very interesting, very different, and really having to deal with everything, if it's technology or sales or product. You have no choice but to get your hands dirty in all the different disciplines that come with a company like that. It also gave me the opportunity to learn more about the futures market. While I had the experience in equities and in fixed income was one of their products. Futures wasn't completely foreign, but it wasn't something that I had spent a lot of time on in my career. So it was almost like a perfect lineup for me to be at that company and to grow the team and to grow the business. And it was extremely rewarding. As you mentioned, I left there in January. Meanwhile, the company, as you can see from press releases, has just been sold to Deutsche Börse, one of the large exchanges in Germany. So I must have done something wrong over the year, something right over the years I was there. No pun intended there. So yeah, and here we are.
Well done. I think that legacy, I think, is a really important part of it, and it seems like a great couple of years. And I love that sort of story as well, because there's so many people who stay, once they're institutionalized in those large companies, tend to stay in there, and there's so much value in it, and it's far more common now to see people coming out of it and sort of doing that. Tell me about some of the big differences. I mean, look, as you say, you've been in large scale institutions for the vast majority of your career. What a learning curve that must have been.
So first of all, I want to point out some differences even between large companies, right? Going from Deutsche Bank, where I was really part of how the culture was developed. If you look at Deutsche Bank's legacy, going from 1995 to when I, 95, when I started there, to when I left in 2011, it was an investment banking culture that was built from different people joining the organization. Going over to Thomson Reuters, which was really an interesting culture from two entities having come together between Reuters and Thomson. Still large company, but very different culture. Now, in terms of comparing large company to small company, look, if you join a small company, nothing is really done for you, right? You have to just get your hands dirty in every single discipline. You don't have a big HR department that does the hiring process for you. You're very connected to the technology. In this case, we were a broker dealer. I was on the hook for compliance for the broker dealer. So your life is not focused on one single line item, like building an algorithm, for example. It's really focused on being very broad and making the entire company work in every single discipline. And there are pros and cons to being in large and small companies. What's great is every single individual, what they're contributing, what they're good at, what they're not so good at. And you really have your feet much more on the ground, and ultimately you're in control of your own destiny. Every single thing you do, if that's going to see a client or delivering a piece of product, makes a difference, good or bad, to the bottom line, right? So it's much more. It's almost like you feel that every step you take makes an impact. Which is a great feeling, and it is extremely rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's having the ability to sort of thrive and do well in both is testament to the sort of value you can add with it. So it gives you a sort of big suite of skills. I mean, look, you could be anywhere across the C line effectively in terms of what you look at next, CEO through to COO, CTO, the product. I think there's, I said this on a recent show. I think there's more and more people from product backgrounds, as you had for, in your time at Deutsche, who've come in there who understand the strategy to really run and successfully scale businesses as well, with that sort of mindset that product management comes back into. And I'd love to explore that again in a little bit as well. But as we were saying, this this puts you into a position where you're now able to sit there and say, right, I want to do something, but I only want to do something that's really interesting, something that's going to excite me, something that's going to invoke that passion with me. You said two interesting things to me, that it's got to be connecting with interesting people, but also doing something that's interesting within that. We know there's an awful lot going on outside the FS space, but if we're looking in the FS space in particular, what do you see that is exciting there? What is the sort of thing that gets you out of bed and gets you saying, right, this is the right challenge for me to now really help a team and help a group scale to do something different and move the needle?
So when you have been in the business as long as I've been, you learn over the years what you're really good at and what you're not so good at. And ultimately, you want to focus on your strengths and where you can add the most value. And you touched on two themes. One is product. I've always been very passionate about building market-leading product. And that's something and by the way, it's irrelevant if that's in finance or outside of finance, where I've recently done some work, building market-leading product and getting that rewarding outcome that your clients are using the product and that it actually improves what they do, their workflow or whatever it may be. It, in my mind, is something that I really like to see. But I also like the operational side of the business. Having a business that works very efficiently, where you use your resources the most efficient way to ultimately drive that product outcome, is also something that I have a lot of passion for. So when I look at my next move in my career, it's certainly looking in that direction of either a product-related role or an operating related role, or a combination of both, right? Because sometimes these kind of get combined. And the third leg of that stool that I don't want to ignore is, because everything is technology these days, right? Having that heavy technology background that I bring to the table is ultimately very helpful, because most of these problems today have to be solved with technology, right? We're not going anymore and throwing large problems at large amounts of people in offshore locations, right? We're trying to solve scale problems with technology, and I've been trying to do this successfully throughout my career, and that's something that I think will become even more embedded in workflows, if that's in the product itself or in the organization.
It's interesting you say it. There's a very good friend of mine who's been at Deutsche for many years, and we were talking, a couple of years ago now about the sort of exodus of talent, of tech talent from the FS space, and why it's a danger for all the the pop-up digital and Amazons and Googles, etc., that have been attacking the banks for the best talent. It was always, I've been in the industry for 20 years. 20 years ago, it was, if you had an offer from a bank, you weren't going to get them anywhere else. It was where they were going to go. And this friend of mine was saying, look, the majority of the really cool and really transformational tech products that are out there remain in the FS sector, and there are so many very cool things and very important things, I think just as importantly, that are happening around FS at the moment, particularly with the last 6-7 months, where we're seeing the digital revolution really start to not only have that as a nice to have, but an absolute necessity for advantage within the banking world. That we're seeing some really interesting stuff come up and arise within that. If you're looking at it with your tech spectacles on and looking at this and saying, right, from a technology point of view, this is where I think the next wave of opportunity is coming to improve that, and be that in equities or fixed income or futures. if we're looking at where the next wave of opportunity comes in to really take the the FS industry to the next level through tech, where would you point that? What really excites you there?
Undoubtedly, cloud and edge computing. And I want to be very specific. Some problems cannot be easily solved, and I worked on some of this when I was at IHS Markit, using pure cloud-based technology, and it has to do with the mass amount of data that you have to transport. So a combination of using cloud where appropriate, but having edge devices where necessary. So you're not moving data where the amount of data is just too large, is certainly something where there is a tremendous room to improve technology and how businesses are being run, and overhauling, frankly, the stacks that banks, and not just banks, also buy-side firms that have deployed a lot of on-prem, and it's in the works, right? It's not that nobody has done work in this space. There's lots of work going on, and lots of people already using Azure and AWS and what have you. But getting this right and ultimately moving away from having on-prem solutions that are hard to maintain and hard to update, will drive probably the next 10 years of the financial industry.
Yeah, and I think that's really exciting. There's so many different opportunities within that, and if you think about the sort of pressure that's on institutions at the moment, and the benefits that can be released from this, particularly in such a regulated sort of space, that confidence to be able to invest in that sort of tech at the moment, I think is the genie's out the bottle, and I think it's going to be a real race to see who can utilize that the best, which creates massive opportunities. And there's such a variety of really cool companies that are growing very rapidly at the moment in the fintech space. And I think we will see, who knows when all of this sort of blows over, but when we see the upturn, we're going to see a lot of companies who are very keen to invest in innovative talent or innovative tech and tech companies that can push that further forward.
So let me add one thing to that, right? So this is just from a pure tech perspective. The other thing that is in everybody's mind, and everybody talks about it, and it's not something that hasn't already been done over the years, is using more advanced data science approaches like machine learning, artificial intelligence. Machine learning and artificial intelligence is there. They're basically algorithms. Back in the day when I studied computer science, we called them neural networks. There's different techniques and better techniques today. But if you think about why that is important, we're generating more and more data, not just in financial services, but overall, right? We're taking videos of our kids at sports games and what have you. The amount of data we have is growing and growing. So it becomes increasingly more difficult is to make sense out of the data and to read out of the data, the information that you really need. So using modern technology like cloud and edge computing combined with better data science and analytic and algorithmic approaches is extremely important, because if you don't do that, you just have a huge data mart and you have your data sitting there, but you can't really extract the information out of the data that you need. So applying the right data science approach is extremely important. And actually interesting, you mentioned firms like Facebook and Google. They're doing this for a completely different reason already really well, right? Where they are actually trying to understand what people's behavior are to ultimately serve them the ads on their apps. So, they, do more retail purchases. But similar paradigms apply for the financial industry.
Yeah, I agree with that. We've been talking about it for there's a group that we run called the Fintech Influencers, and for a long time we've been talking about actually having more people in from that sort of background to help educate the financial sector, because you're right, the retail world is light years ahead, I think, of FS at the moment in terms of its use of data. That goes down to supermarkets and how they work with it, all the way through to the online retail industry and e-commerce industry, which are particularly in B2C, which is doing some phenomenal stuff. And you think about the amount of data and the efficiency gains within FS, and again, that sort of far more conservative view that it's had of tech over many years. I think probably about 5-6 years ago, I was sat with the founder of Tesco Bank and Benny Higgins, and he was talking there about no longer being able to have say you've just got a digital strategy, you've got to have a strategy that's digital. And it was so important to towards that, particularly with a company such as Tesco, which I know is more famous over here than in the States, but it absolutely ran to be the largest grocer in the UK because of its ability to utilize data through Clubcard that allowed them to utilize a company called Dunnhumby that allowed them to gain such commercial advantage. It's been screaming out that there's an opportunity here, and you're right that with the advent of cloud and edge technology, and then also being able to bring data science together with it, just finding the right talent that's able to do that. And that's where I think it's interesting that you were talking there about working with interesting people and connecting with people and finding that chemistry of really excited technologists who've got a passion to shake the world a little bit without being too grandiose about it. That's an opportunity I think that you're looking for at the moment with the wealth of experience that you can bring to it. I think that brings quite an exciting sort of bit to the table as well. That experience alongside the rapid innovation at the same sort of stage can bring real world significance to it. And I'm interested in that with you because we see a lot of tech. You just said that there's a business you've been involved in that's exiting, which is really exciting. But there's so many tech companies that have got great ideas that start up and haven't got that commercial mind of the experience of what sits on the institutional side to be able to do that. That's surely got to be something which you can really bring to the party as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and if you look at statistics of startups, more than 80% of startups don't make it. I think the number is even higher. And it's related, to age. Right? Younger people don't have the experience. Experience comes with being in a business for a long time. And the thing that I've found, and I've done some of this recently, one I'm engaged with is in the non-for-profit space, but bringing people that have 25, 30 years of experience and coupling them with young, innovative people. Not saying that if you have 30 years experience, you can't be innovative, but coupling younger people with tremendous ideas, with experienced people that have been in the market for a long time, I think is a very powerful combination that allows companies to be more successful. So yes, I'm certainly interested in new entrants in the fintech space, that need somebody that has lots of business experience, has made a bunch of mistakes that they can avoid if they have somebody around, and almost like an adult at the pool. And again, it comes down to combining people with skills from different disciplines. Again, not everybody is good at everything. And that coupled with experience, I think, gives you an interesting cocktail of bringing the right people together to be successful.
Absolutely. And I think there's that becomes attractive in many different ways for sort of businesses that are on that upward trajectory who are looking to now sort of hit a plateau and really want to get to the next sort of phase, or to have that gravitas to be able to to face off to some other businesses, but also to VCs and PE houses who are looking to bring in that experience to those teams as well. Becomes a good addition to them and their party. The other side of that, of course, is the sort of non-executive side of things. Is that something you've looked at?
For sure. And there's there's very interesting opportunities out there in the space. There's actually there's lots of changes going on in the space right as we speak. So and there's it's an interesting space, but it's also a space that's very hard to navigate because the mandates that are out there are so vast that you got to find the right opportunities, and you got to be careful what you get yourself into.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Well, that's where the try and taste it bit comes into it, doesn't it? Look, there's going to be people watching this who are really interested in what you're saying, and James, I know James Campbell over here at Harrington Starr is helping you out and representing you on various bits and pieces. But if there are people here who've listened to a bit of the story and are keen to find out a little bit more and maybe have some ideas that they need some help with, what's the best way to get in touch with you, Ralf?
I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you find me on LinkedIn with my contact information, and that's a good way to reach out.
Good starting point for all of it. Well, listen, there's a guy here who I know is going to add value to to businesses very soon as well, but it's got to be the right thing, quite rightly. And I love I'm excited just talking to you about the sort of scale of opportunities that are out there for you. And I know that I'm really watching very keenly from over here as well to see where you land up next, because my bets are going to be very quickly that company is going to go and do great things as well. And Ralf, it's been brilliant getting to know you. Brilliant to hear a bit more of the story here today. And thanks so much for joining us and being so candid on the show today.
Thanks for your time, Toby.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you all for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it. Please do get in touch with Ralf. Please do get in touch with us if we can help out with that as well. And we'll look forward to speaking to you soon on another episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks ever so much.